I've done the 90% thing to make things better. What's the last 10% that you can do?
We are about to launch.
Solo round.
Oh, my knee. I hate when that happens.
Truth, not trends.
Trends, what's up? We got achy knees around here, people.
What's
got
going
achy
on,
knees.
folks?
It's Jesse Schmidt. He's back. He's live. He's here in the studio.
I hope.
Oh,
Where's Liam Bauer? He's been here
I've been
the whole time,
Never went anywhere.
holding down the fort.
That's right. It's TNT Strength, Truth Not Trends, the podcast that helps you maximize your strength as safely
And efficiently.
as possible. My name is Liam Bauer. I've been a strength coach for 36 years and counting.
My name's Jesse Schmidt. I've been a strength coach for 2,731 days.
Man, those days piling up slowly but surely.
8 years next April.
Man, it's come 8
I
years.
know, sometime middle of next year it'll be
Still haven't even-
3,000.
Still hasn't even hit the decade yet.
Getting close, getting closer. Well, we had a client ask about what they could do to fix their achy knees, and we thought that might be a good episode for a podcast. So we're going to talk about it, and just want to give a little disclaimer here that we are not, medical doctors. And if you have a serious chronic injury going on, it might be a good idea to consult a doctor or a physical therapist. And
Sure.
if they, give you the green light to do some strength training, then that's probably a good idea. And we'll get into that in this episode.
Absolutely.
Got some good suggestions for you. And before we get to the episode, we want to remind you to check out tntstrength.com for all of our delightful 5 nutritional supplements. What are they, TAKU?
That's right. We have, of course, the delicious, chocolatey good whey protein. We have some fish oil. That's always good for those, inflammation, as a matter of fact. Fish oil can be helpful for that. Maybe they need a little fish oil in their nutrition plan. We got some probiotics for that gut biome balance. And, of course, creatine monohydrate, the best performance-enhancing supplement out there in the world. And what else do we have? Some K2D3. That's right. Good for those immunities. We love that stuff.
Immunities? What the hell are immunities?
Another thing I want to remind you about is I'm working with these guys over at Anata Gym, and they make some amazing home gym products, the smart gyms. Check it out, Anata Gym, INNODIGYM, Anata Gym. And if you use the code TAKU, because you're so inspired, you're interested in picking one up, you can get 20% off anytime on anything over there at the Anata Gym store. Check it out.
Is that TAKU?
TAKU.
So there's the code for you folks, and make sure to check out tntstrength.com for those nutritional supplements, free shipping anywhere in the continental United States. And without further ado, you remember that those parts of the episodes in Family Guy where Peter Griffin is like running through town all happily, and there's like some sort of montage, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere he trips and falls down and bangs his knee and goes,
For like 10 minutes.
and then it just goes on way. He does like 10 or 15 ahs, and it's like not funny, but it's like going on so long it becomes funny.
That's one of their things. The other thing I always joke about Family Guy though, is that no matter when they fall or why they fall, they always end up in the exact same position. Like everybody ends up in that Family Guy sort of twisted position no matter what's going on.
So yeah, that's when we talk about achy knees. I think of Peter Griffin. Yeah, I had a client come in the other night, and she just goes, "Yeah, my knees hurting more and more. What's going on? What can we do about this?" So that inspired the topic for this episode, because there are a lot of achy knees out there in the world for various reasons, and
yeah, for sure,
we're going to dig into what those reasons are, and what you can do about it to make them less achy.
Everyone out there who has an achy knee, raise your hand.
Oh my God, the whole room.
If you now have or have ever had an achy knee.
So this particular client who I'm mentioning, first thing I asked her was, well, what are all the things you're doing? And she strength trains a couple times a week, and she turns out she runs Monday through Friday every day. And she says she normally doesn't run on the weekend. She does a little bit of yoga as well. She's a pretty active person.
Sounds like it.
So, I started rattling off some things, some suggestions for her. The first thing I told her is, well, typically if your joints are hurting, there's some sort of overuse going on. So the first thing to consider is doing less. And her immediate reaction was, "Oh, I don't like that." She literally said it like that.
Do we know how much she's running like every week?
Yeah,
like
I mean, it's not a lot. It's not a ton, because we know a lot of runners who are putting on 25, 30, 40 miles a week.
Yeah.
And she's running more like 5 to 10 miles a week.
Okay.
But she's running every day.
Right.
And she's running every day, Monday through Friday. And so I said, okay, well, that's not all that much mileage. I don't know how hard she's running that mile, so that's another thing to consider.
Sure.
The more challenging the exercise stimulus, we know the longer the recovery needs to be. And she's basically Monday through Friday not letting herself recover, and then her body's like, "Oh, sweet Jesus, thank you," on the weekend, and then Monday she's right back to pounding away on those knees. So I told her, it might not be a lot of mileage, but there's still not a lot of rest happening.
Yeah.
And so first thing you should do is consider taking a day off. Maybe just swap a day, like run Monday, Tuesday, take Wednesday off, and run Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then take Sunday, something like that, where you're at least giving yourself a little bit of rest. She hated that suggestion, but it is, TAKU, you can chime in on this one. I think that rest is probably the number one suggestion we have for anybody who's hurting for any reason, and more is better.
Yeah. Overuse injuries, basically, regardless of what they're being triggered by, are almost always going to require rest. And a lot of times I tell people, the less you pay attention to that element, the longer you're likely to have that thing hang around, right? Like a 1 week thing could turn into a 1 month thing, could turn into a 6 month thing, could turn into just chronic, right? If you're just ignoring it or trying to hope it's going to go away, all that kind of stuff that people do, try to work around it, work through it. So
the whole idea of working around it. In a strength training setting, if your anterior deltoid's hurting, we can figure out some other exercises to work the muscles around that area without tapping the anterior deltoid. But the idea that you could just change your gait, or do something.
Have light days and heavy days.
Like the main takeaway here is you need to not do the thing that is causing you pain in the first place. Maybe not cold turkey, but probably there needs to be some more rest. So it made me think of that Hippocrates quote, right? Before you heal someone, ask him if he's willing to give up the things that make him sick. So because what are the things that we could say right here? We could say, oh yeah, you need to go You need to go hop in an infrared sauna. That'll fix that knee right up, right? You need to hop in an ice plunge. You need to, you need to get a deep tissue massage. You need, right? Like these things might be helpful, but probably 90% of the, likelihood that you actually alleviate the injury, like you get to the root cause, is resting consistently.
Yeah.
Not just until the injury goes away, but the injury went away because you're resting more. So injecting more rest purposefully into your regular routine.
Yeah, and depending on what they're doing, this, using this person as an example, like maybe they're strength training twice a week with, a couple of days off in between, kind of as you described. One thing they could do is they could run, if they can schedule in such a way where they can keep a good distance between the two, meaning at least 4 hours between those two activities. I think it's better to have a little time rather than do them back to back. Like they could run in the morning and strength train later, or vice versa, and then take the next day off from those things if they could get them in the same day. If they're not doing them in the same day, kind of like what you suggested, maybe they were running on Monday, strength training on Tuesday, taking Wednesday off,
Yeah.
Taking a day off, like you say, after several of these things, definitely increasing the days off. I'm a big believer that we should have equal to or more than days off than days on, right? Which is super counter to like most of the fitness culture, right? You got to strength train 4 times a week, 5 times a week is better, blah, 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 right? Or whatever. Running, we know that runners are almost always trying to find ways to run more. It's part of their culture. It's part of, it's ingrained. So yeah, so I feel like that's why the 3 times a week, honestly, for everything is a pretty good balance. If you're strength training and running and your total fitness activities is about 3 times a week, that's probably plenty. And we can keep cycling it. We go back to our old model of like alternating strength, conditioning strength, right?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite programs of all time. The Mondays, it's a 2-week block. So Monday strength, Wednesday conditioning, Friday strength. And then in week 2, you flip it. So you condition Monday, strength, Wednesday, condition Friday, and then flip it again the next 2-week block.
So every 2 weeks, you're getting 3 of each stimulus, right?
And you're also always getting 2 to 3 days of rest in between strength days.
Exactly. So
or more, up to 5 days.
That approach seems like sustainable for almost anyone, for almost any activity that you could plug it into, right? Any kind of sport, whatever else you're doing. Because, and again, the more involved you are with the activity, if it's a sport for you versus like recreational running, where you're just kind of mindlessly out there jogging around. But if it's a sport, then there's always other stuff eating into your energy reserves,
Right.
And especially if it's a tactical sport, there's always, if you're a combat athlete, a boxer or whatever, then just the practice of the skill ends up being a conditioning session in its own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and that, when you start talking about opening it up to just sports in general, it's important to acknowledge here that as I told our client, there's strength building and there's playing your sport. And one thing we always have to recognize is that playing sports is inherently dangerous. And, it's always easy to use the example of like, football or hockey. And,
right.
You get out there, playing competitively. And of course, you understand that there's a, relatively high risk of injury. But, if you're just like a weekend warrior going out there and, having what you think is a leisurely run, we still have to consider that as a sport. And, injuries can and do happen. I mean, if you're exercising regularly, you basically have to acknowledge that you're going to be injured at some point.
Yeah, especially with sports, even like the weekend warriors, just as a matter of fact, I literally today just got a text from one of our clients who's a recreational hockey player who said, and this is, supposed to be low contact, right? These are older guys having fun. He got smashed into the boards and got his ribs dislocated. Literally just in the last like 24 to 48 hours. Right? So he's like, I'm out. You know what I mean? Like my ribs popped out and I'm in pain and everything, right? And he's just playing hockey for fun.
Right.
And, they're not trying to prove anything. These guys are, in their 50s and 60s, but it happens, right? It happens in soccer. It happens in any kind of dynamic, open movement sport. There's that chance, someone's going to bump into you. Someone's going to knock you down. You're going to catch an elbow, you know what I mean? Whatever.
So if it's just you, or if there are other people playing the sport with you, there is a risk of injury. So you just have to accept it.
Yeah.
Back to this original client I was talking about, the ultimate suggestion I gave her was take one more day of rest than you're taking right now in the middle of the week and see how you feel. And, I said, if a week goes by and you don't feel a little better, then take another day of rest. And, if you do that, if you're up to, 3 or 4, extra days of rest, you probably should think about taking a full week off from everything. And I even, I went so far as to tell her, look, I would recommend if you're like still hurting or hurting more and you're resting more, take a week off from everything, strength training included. And, we'll see where we're at that point. But, some people, the other thing is sometimes there can be like a delayed reaction in acknowledging that you have an injury or a chronic injury. And when you really think back, like how long has this been hurting me? Oh, 6 weeks, 12 weeks. I mean, 12
Several
weeks
years.
12 weeks is a quarter of the year, I don't know what the textbook definition of a chronic injury is really, but I know for myself personally, if anything is aching for more than a day or two, I start to think about, like taking some major rest time.
Yeah, and honestly, again, when I work with like distance clients, especially, and this is something I've been doing for years. The very first thing I try to get them to do is no matter what they're doing, whatever their sport is or whatever that they've been doing, when they approach me about wanting to start a new plan, I always tell them to take 10 days off.
Mm-hmm.
So we can start as fresh as possible, right? And of course, they always freak out. I'm like, whatever you're doing, let's just take 10 days off, and then we'll start fresh and create this plan, right? So, yeah, I think that's great advice. What you're telling this person is that they should probably take a whole week off. Things are not going to get better because they're not going to do it. All those other modalities, like you mentioned, with the ice plunges and massage, they all have some potential to alleviate stuff, but probably better if they're ongoing practices in a more well-designed kind of total program.
Right. Totally.
So you're not just waiting till you're in pain and then you're like, oh, now I need a massage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And this goes not just for runners or distance athletes, but could be any person who's doing a repetitive thing who has an achy joint. First, we have to take a look at removing the stimulus that's causing this negative reaction. And the analogy I use for her, which I just came up with this recently, I've used with other clients, is that imagine like I'm holding my hand over a flame and my hand is getting burned, right? So the flame is causing an injury. And rather than moving my hand, I just keep rubbing ointment on it, right? Like that's what people try to do. They're like, no, I can't stop running. I can't stop doing X, Y, Z, right? I love doing that, but it's hurting. If it's hurting you, right, it's a problem. And so we have to really get to the root cause rather than just treating the symptoms there.
Yeah, and then counterintuitively, sort of to like be prepared, right? We talk about muscles, because a lot of runners recreationally don't do a lot of strength training, right? They haven't recognized the value yet, and we work with a lot of runners here who do recognize the value and see it and feel it once they get involved. But counterintuitively, right? Remember, the muscles are not just the engines that drive you, but they're the shock absorbers as well. When you increase the strength, and they can produce more force, but they can also absorb more force. Another thing with knees specifically, since that's kind of the topic, a couple of things that people misunderstand. Like one thing that often happens is, one exercise that we use a lot is the leg extension machine. There's many coaches out there that will tell you that leg extension machines are bad for your knees, right? They'll just make a universal statement like they're bad for your knees. Number one, not all leg extension machines are created equal, as we know. But the truth is, I think of that as the thing you want to do when there's a knee problem, right? It's a great way to fix knees that are bothering you. Is to strengthen the quads and all those muscles. But the other thing is you want to really pay attention to the other side, right? Which is hamstrings and glutes and all this stuff. Humans are rear wheel drive, and we want to have a really strong posterior chain that also helps support the knee really effectively. So a lot of times, if you're having knee problems, are your hamstrings not being strengthened effectively? Are you strengthening in general the lower body muscles effectively? So adding strength training could be a good thing.
Yeah, we didn't even really consider that until now. That if you're hurting and you're playing sports, are you strength training at all?
Yeah,
you should be.
Hey, what are those guys doing here? Whenever I feel like I'm stalling out on my bench press, I know I need a new strength curve. Whether you're stalling out on the road or stalling out in the gym, you need something with great engineering.
That's right. And
So look for the pendulum. Pendulum.
Not just your average strength machines.
No, they have smooth strength curves.
Amazing rigidity.
And did we mention the engineering's fantastic?
That's right. Not to mention, they come in cool colors.
Like red.
And silver. Well, that was kind of weird. What was that all about? Back to the interview.
I was talking to somebody recently who, he runs the strength and conditioning for a high school program. He's a high school coach. I was asking him a little bit about the program, and he described it a little bit to me, and then he said, "Yeah, but when we're in season, we don't do any strength training."
Yeah, I think
that's a major mistake.
Yeah, that was a very common practice for years, like NFL, even all that stuff. They just figure, we're going to be tired, so we're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, I don't think he liked me very much when I told him that he was leaving a lot of gains on the table. And I've seen this in firsthand experience because I've trained a bunch of teenage athletes, and it's crazy. I mean, the first time I was working with them, I was surprised because I actually went in with that expectation that we're going to have to just like totally cool things off, maintain during the season, that sort of thing.
Right.
But the results dictated that they just kept on growing. Teenagers are just like in the sweet spot of just like, crazy gains.
Yeah. And again, you want, as an athlete, where strength training is not just to enhance performance, but like to prevent injury, right? Or to limit the potential for injury. Think of it as almost that as well. And, as the season progresses, especially if your team is doing well, right? Now, are you going to go into postseason, right? You want to be as strong as possible, as long as possible, so you can continue to perform and continue to be resistant to injuries, all that stuff, right? So yeah, again, it was a common practice to kind of dump it in season and think that it was only valuable when they had lots of time on their hands. But now, coaches, especially, there's a lot of high intensity coaches in the NFL, for instance, for some that are friends of ours, as we know, Margasanovich and Dave Durrell and other guys that I've worked with, they recognize how important it is as the season goes on, right? Mm-hmm. As the season progresses, you actually need to do it more. Now, they may cut the sessions, they may make them briefer, right? If they know there's a lot of load on the body, they may make them a little less often. Maybe they'll train 3 times a week off season. Now they're only doing 2 times a week, or they might do only an upper and only a lower, or whatever they determine for recovery requirements. But they know that it's, they need to do it.
Yeah. So, okay, for our listeners, here's where we're at. Your knees are hurting. You approach your coaches, Jesse and TAKU, and they told you to rest more, and you're doing it. And now you're feeling a little better, but you're still a little achy. You got another rest day in your week or something like that, and you're wondering what else can you do? I've done the 90% thing to make things better. What's the last 10% that you can do? Well, here's a couple suggestions. Number one is ice the things that hurt. Ice is free for most of us.
Yeah.
So no money, hardly any time. I'll use myself as an example. I run obstacle course races, and I know that the most competitive people in this sport are great runners. And so even though I don't love running, I know that I need to do that to be good at the sport. And so for the last, 18 months or something like that, I've been running a 10K once a week in addition to my 2 strength training days. And I've gotten a lot better results in these competitions. And so here's my latest run from last week. I was running up in the Berkeley Hills, 6.3 miles, an hour and 10 minutes. There was 1,000 feet of elevation. So I was doing some pretty steep hills up there. And I finished my run. I came back and I threw ice on my knees for 10 minutes. And that's what I do every single time after a run because it's high impact. I'm literally running on like a 30-degree grade, very, very, maybe steeper than that. I don't know, just like very tough. And the alternative is running on pavement, which is also really rough on the knees. So it's just automatic for me. Even if I'm not hurting. Liam used the word prophylactic, right? It's just automatic for me. When I finish a run, I grab my protein shake and I iced for 10 minutes while I'm guzzling a protein shake.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody was lucky enough to remember when Michael Jordan was playing basketball, every time he came off the court, he would put ice on his knees, like immediately right there in the game. Like he was icing his knees anytime he was not on the court. Just like bam, ice, and then back out, ice. It wasn't. He's trying to limit that inflammation, recover more. Right. It's a powerful intervention that shouldn't be overlooked. And as Jesse's saying, like it's easy, it's cheap. I was lucky enough.
The worst case scenario is it does nothing for you. If you're not a believer in cold therapy, and you don't even want to take advantage of a placebo effect, worst case is you're just sitting there for 10 minutes and nothing happens.
Probably one of the best things about being a college athlete was was having an actual team of trainers that were taking care of you, and they're like taping your ankles and icing things, and if anything was going on, they're like working on it, and that was a luxury, I've never had before or since. So we don't all have, teams of trainers at our disposal, but there's simple things that you can definitely do. Other things to do is to take a look at your nutrition, which is sort of might not seem like it would make a difference. Are you not only meeting your nutrition needs, the basic needs, like getting enough protein, which is kind of help for recovery. Sleep, we know, is super important for recovery. So not just those days off, but are you getting quality sleep?
Right. And those two things right there, sleep and protein, are probably like 90% of the battle with the nutrition.
Yeah. So if you're hitting those things, are you doing it? Are you writing it down? Are you paying attention? Most people, the answer is no. Then you can look, if you want to get deeper into it, this might seem like, buzzword stuff or whatever, but there may be inflammation. You may be having, inflammation we know is part of these injuries, but are you not helping that situation by the choices you're making nutritionally? Are you eating foods that are pro-inflammatory, lots of sugar, this crappy stuff that might not, might be, and we're all a little bit different, right? Some people are more, sensitive to gluten, for instance, right? Sugar things, they have different responses. If you may experiment. I have people all the time who, when they cut the sugars and simple stuff down, they report to me, that they're less achy, right? They notice it within a few days. Oh, I usually wake up stiff and sore, and now it's not happening. It's like, so you want to look at things like that, but hitting the basic needs of the sleep and the protein is going to be huge to managing the days off. And I think looking at, are you making good choices in your overall nutritional plan? Then of course there's the most simple stuff, like if it's really acute, do you tolerate anti-inflammatories? Those are things you can experiment with in the moment. It could be helpful. You don't want to be someone who's like popping Advil every day.
Yeah.
That's just not good for you, right? But in the short term, if you're having some acute pain that's higher than usual, combining the ice and the rest and some anti-inflammatory stuff, get a massage, all those things could be useful.
There you go. You mentioned massage again. That might be nice, right? It's I don't think of it as a permanent fix, but it can provide temporary relief. It's just a nice thing. Treat yourself. And do it more. Try to make it a regular part. Do it once a week. Versus like waiting till you're in pain and like, oh, now I really need one. Yeah, I like to schedule a massage for a day or two after I've run one of these Spartan races. Yeah, that reminds me, because I'm going to do a 15-miler in about a month. So
yeah,
I definitely want to get myself feeling good after that's over. Another sort of obvious one that can make a difference is making sure your equipment's up to date. This client that we were talking about originally, I asked her, like, well, how old are your shoes? You're running every single day. Are your shoes, are you running in good shoes? These, as strength coaches, we just generally think about what are the repetitive motions people are going through. Are they sitting all day? Are they standing all day? Are they, things like your mattress can make a difference because you sleep on it for 8 hours a night. And if it's, a lumpy bed of straw, that might not be the best. And it might make sense to invest in something that's going to, have you feeling better. And that can play into sleep too, Sure. So these are decisions that you want to consider. So
yeah, even the sleep thing, right? Are you sleeping in a place that's dark enough, quiet enough, cool enough? Those kind of things. Little tweaks you can do to improve.
Set your thermostat to 58 degrees, not 68 degrees. 58 degrees. Make sure you've got your blackout curtains. That's right.
58.
No blue light for at least an hour before you go to sleep.
Yeah.
I want you in bed 8.5 hours before it's time to wake up. That gives you 30 minutes to meditate.
I like the 3-2-1 bedtime routine, right? Like 3 hours before you're going to go to sleep, you stop eating things. 2 hours, you stop drinking things. 1 hour, no screen time.
Oh, that's a good point with the drinking things too. I'm guilty of I stay pretty well hydrated and I don't always follow that one. And it's not like a major thing to like wake up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, but the difference definitely when I can sleep all the way through the night, and if I've woken up in the middle of the night, much better.
Yeah, because I find sometimes I'm also like really like pounding liquids just before I go to bed.
Yeah.
And then I know I'm gonna be up in a few hours for sure, and that's probably a factor also of, for me personally, of not being more well hydrated earlier in the day, right? And now I've got all this momentary peace and quiet. I don't have a lot, and now I'm recognizing, whoa,
right?
I haven't been on top of it.
It's funny. At some point, I heard that that was actually like a strategy of like Native American like warring tribes. Like if they needed to wake up really early, they would intentionally drink lots of water before they went to sleep.
That makes sense.
It's like a natural alarm clock.
Like, damn it.
So stop doing that native alarm clock, folks. Make sure you get full nights of sleep and do like our clients doing and go invest in a solid pair of running shoes.
Yeah, if running's your thing, you definitely want to get some good ones and recognize that they wear out sooner than you think. Usually when they're starting to feel friendly and cushy, it's probably time to get some brand new ones.
We have to think about all this stuff in terms of investing, right? A new mattress costs money, a new pair of shoes costs money. Taking like getting a regular massage or a chiropractic adjustment. These things can cost money, but changing your nutrition might cost money. But what are the results down the road that we're looking for? We're all angling to keep doing the things that we love to do for as long as we can, do them pain-free. And so what's required is to make sure you're investing in the right equipment, activities, habits, recovery modalities so that you can just stay in the game. That's if you're injured, you got to come out of the game, and that's no fun for anybody. So if you do, if you're a runner and you do the thing you like to do slightly less, but you feel significantly better, that's a big win.
Sounds like a win to me.
Listen to your body. We don't want you going,
That's right. Take care of those knees, people.
Boom, baby. What's up, people? Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Truth Not Trends. That's right here at TNT Strength Headquarters, Truth Not Trends.
Please, if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, rate, and review us on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And don't forget to share with a friend.
You can find us on the web at tntstrength.com.
That's right, TNT Strength now coming to you in person at 5255 College Avenue in Oakland, California. You can call the studio 510-768-5421. You can also text us at 855-796-9905.
Or shoot us an email at contact@tntstrength.com. And whatever you do, stay off of that stupid blue bubbly boasting.
Well, that took an interesting twist.
Mixed and edited by Desmond McNeese for We Mixed It, LLC. Go to whatsoundsawesome.com.
Oh, Kristen Charles is a horse. Kristen Charles is a horse. Well, look at her dance like a look at her go like a look at her dance like a horse. Oh, Kristen Charles is a horse. Kristen Charles is a horse. Well, look at her dance like a look at her go like a look at her dance like a horse. Oh, Kristen Charles is a horse. Kristen Charles is a horse. Well, look at her dance like a look at her go like a look at her dance like a horse. Oh, Kristen Charles is a horse. Kristen Charles is a horse. Well, look at her dance like a look at her go like a look at her dance like a horse. Oh, Kristen Charles is a horse. Kristen Charles is a horse. Well, look at her dance like a look at her go like a look at her dance like a horse. Oh, Kristen Charles is a horse. Kristen Charles is a horse. Well, look at her dance like a look at her go like a look at her dance like a horse. Oh, Kristen Charles is a horse. Kristen Charles is a horse. Well, look at her dance like a look at her go like a look at her dance like a horse. Oh, Kristen Charles is a horse. Kristen Charlie's a horse.